Okay. So for your second lesson class or the last lesson for the midterms, we have your prions. So in lesson 6 you were able to know that prions class are technically not viruses, but instead they are known as your mutated proteins. So in this lesson I'm going to explain further or going to help you understand what are prions. Now, prions class would cause diseases or would cause transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. Now, take note, class, that these TSEs or your transmissible spongiform encephalopathies are a family of rare progressive neurodegenerative disorders that would affect both humans and animals. So itong TSE nyo class would affect the brain, and if you are affected or not treated immediately, it could cause the deterioration or the lack of ability of your brain. Now, they are distinguished class by long incubation periods, characteristic spongiform changes associated with neural loss, and a failure to induce inflammatory response. So the thing that you have to be careful with this type of disease class is that they have a long incubation period. There are some individuals affected by this disease wherein they did not know that they had the the rare type of disorder from a very young age. It was later on found out na positive pala yung patient due to this very long incubation period. Now, the cause of these TSEs are your prions. Now, prions would refer to abnormal pathogenic agents that are transmissible and can induce abnormal folding of specific normal cellular proteins known as your prion proteins, most abundantly in the brain. Now, the function of these normal prion proteins are still not completely understood. The abnormal folding of the prion proteins leads to brain damage and characteristic signs and symptoms of the disease. Prion's diseases are usually rapidly progressive and always fatal. So the thing you need to take note, class, here is that your prions class are abnormal agents that are normally found in the brain. Now, prions, if they do not undergo mutation class, they are considered normal. If you remember yung PRP proteins nyo. Now, your PRP proteins, when they undergo mutation, they would lead to an abnormal type of prion. Now, the prion protein PRP appears to be the major and possibly exclusive component of prions. Now, PRPC is the protein product that is thought to be the target for prion disease. In the wild type, it is a normal host glycoprotein encoded by a single exon of a single copy gene found on the gene PRNP on chromosome 20. It would assume class a alpha helical structure. So yung itsura ng prions nyo class would be alpha helical and is located on the cell surface with a glycoinositol phospholipid anchor. Treatment with protease would result in complete digestion. In infected individuals class, the PRPC protein is deranged to become the PRPSC protein. This glycoprotein assembles into beta sheets and is located into the cytoplasmic vesicle. Okay, yung PRP nyo class, this is the normal prion protein. It appears alpha helical. Now, if a person is infected or would undergo mutation, it becomes the abnormal prion PRPSC. So from a alpha helical structure, yung PRP nyo, it would now become a beta sheet protein known as the PRPSC, which is located in cytoplasmic vesicles. Now, the insoluble PRPSC would accumulate inside cells instead of being located on the cell surface. It is only incompletely digested by proteases, and this insolubility is thought to contribute to storage problems and aggregation. So just to give you a recap class, pag tinanong sa quiz nyo, what is the gene that would cause or where the gene where you would find the encoding of your PRP protein, the answer is your PRNP. So PRNP is the gene that would encode for prion protein, while your PRP is the normal prion protein found on the surface of your cell. If it undergoes mutation, it becomes an abnormal prion, PRPSC, which accumulates inside the cell. And another thing to take note of, yung PRP nyo would appear as alpha helical, while the abnormal prion, PRPSC, would appear beta sheets. Now, there are several distinguishing hallmarks of prion diseases class, but although the etiological agent may be recoverable from other organs, most of the time class the disease would only be confined to the nervous system. The basic features are neurodegeneration and spongiform changes. Amyloid plaques may be present. Long incubation periods, months to decades, would precede the onset of clinical illness and are followed by a chronic progressive disease, wherein the patient would live from weeks to years. Take note, class, that when you encounter or would acquire this disease, this is always fatal, having almost 100% mortality, with no known cases of remission or recovery. The host would show no inflammatory response and no immune response. The agents do not appear antigenic. Pag sinabi mong antigenic class, this is the ability of an antigen to induce an immune response. The highly antigenic and antigen is class, the more it can cause your immune system to be active. But the problem with prions kasi class, they are not antigenic. They are not identified as foreign particles by the body, leading to no inflammatory response, leading to no immune response. Therefore, no production of interferon is elicited. Yung interferon nyo class, this is the one that would destroy abnormal proteins in the body, especially viruses. So if there's no interferon being produced by certain cells, it would not be able to destroy these prions and even viruses. There is also no effect on host B cell or T cell function. In your immunosero lecture, if naturo ni Dr. Patron class, yung B cell nyo, if there's an immune response, your B cell would transform into a plasma cell. And in the plasma cell class, they would secrete different types of immunoglobulins, five types: IgA, G, M, E, and D. While your T cells class would become your CD4 positive T cell or your CD8 positive T cells. Now, both T cells class would be involved in the destruction of viruses. But in this case, since they do not cause any immune response, they would not be able to activate your B cell and T cell. Now, immunosuppression of the host has no effect on pathogenesis. However, chronic inflammation induced by other factors, such as your viruses, bacteria, and autoimmunity, may affect prion pathogenesis. It has been observed that prions would accumulate in organs with chronic lymphocytic inflammation. With coincident with nephritis, prions are excreted in the urine. Di ba nga ang prions nyo class are protein? Now, if you have too much protein in your blood, this can cause your kidney damage. An example of a kidney damage is your nephritis. Now, in nephritis class, your nephrons are damaged or inflamed. And remember, ang purpose ng nephrons nyo is to filter substances. Now, if you have a damaged nephron, the proteins, specifically the prions, would be excreted into the urine, wherein due to the inability of nephrons to filter them. Now, what are the types of prion diseases class? So there are human and animal prion diseases. The first one is your human prion diseases. Under human prion diseases, we have your Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, also known as the classical CJD. Then we have your variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or your VCJ. We have your Gerstmann-Straussler-Scheinker syndrome, your fatal familial insomnia, your Kuro, your Parkinson's disease, your Alzheimer's disease, your Huntington's, and your Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, itong apat na to class, these are the most common genetic prion disorders. Sa mga characteristics ng class, yung Parkinson's, yung Alzheimer's, yung Huntington's, and your Lou Gehrig's, all of them would cause neurodegenerative symptoms. Diba sa Alzheimer's, you tend to forget things. Sa Parkinson's, you would have abnormal control on your muscles and so on. So, nag-degenerate yung mga nerves nyo class in those four diseases. While itong Creutzfeldt-Jakob, variant Creutzfeldt, Gerstmann-Straussler, fatal familial insomnia, and Kuro are the ones that are deadly. And once you get infected by them, they tend to be fatal. Pero yung Parkinson's, yung Alzheimer's, Huntington's, and Lou Gehrig's class, they are more on a lifestyle debilitating. When I say debilitating, nakakalimit sila ng lifestyle ng isang tao. When you have them, you tend to have problems with your everyday life. Then we have your animal prion diseases. So we have your bovine spongiform encephalopathy, your chronic wasting disease, your scrapie, your transmissible mink encephalopathy, your feline spongiform encephalopathy, and your ungulate spongiform encephalopathy. Now let's start with the first one class, the classical Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Now this is a rapidly progressive, invariably fatal neurodegenerative disorder caused by an abnormal isoform of a cellular glycoprotein known as your prion. Now, CJD class would occur worldwide, and the estimated annual incidence, when you say incidence class, this refers to new cases, in many countries has been reported to be about one case per a million population. Treatment of prion diseases would remain supportive. So supportive lang class, you have to try to treat the symptoms if there are any. But there's no specific therapy to stop the progression of this disease. So take a look at the picture class. On the left side, that is the normal pathology of the brain. But if you take a look at the right one, note the spongiform pathology of the left picture. When you say spongiform, nakakita na kayo ng sponge, di ba? Sa sponge class, may mga holes kayong makikita if you view them microscopically. Now, in a spongiform encephalopathy, the brain would develop these spaces wherein the brain have been digested class. Imagine your brain being digested, forming this type of encephalopathy, wherein you would have missing parts of your brain tissues. So that's the problem with your CJD. Very fatal because of what it does to the brain, to the point that it would cause degeneration of your brain tissues. Then we have your variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So this is a prion disease that was first discovered in 1996 in the United Kingdom. Now, there's now strong scientific evidence that the agent responsible for the outbreak of prion disease in cows bovine spongiform encephalopathy or the mad cow disease is the same agent responsible for the outbreak of VCJD. To simplify class, yung statement na yan, sabi niya, is that your mad cow disease or your bovine spongiform encephalopathy and VCJ have the same cause, which are your prions. Now, VCJ class is not the same as your classic CJD. It has different clinical and pathological characteristics. Each disease has a particular genetic profile of the prion protein gene. So in the bottom part class, makakita kayo ng table dyan showing the difference between classic and variant CJD. So the median age of death for classic CJD is 68 years old. For variant CJD, it's 28 years old. So kung may classical CJD ka, you tend to die at an older age. But if you have a variant CJD, you tend to die at a younger age. Now, the median duration of illness class for classic CJD is 4 to 5 months. Meaning class, kapag na-infect ka ng classical CJD, you tend to die at a faster rate at around 4 to 5 months. So take note class kapag ang classic CJD would usually occur at a later age of life. But once it affects you or once you are infected with it, you only have a very short amount of lifespan, 4 to 5 months. While for the variant CJD class, the median duration of the illness is at least a year, 13 to 14 months. So you would acquire variant CJD at a very young age, early 20s to late 20s. But there is a longer time of death or allowed time of to live at least 1 year, 13 to 14 months. Then for the clinical signs and symptoms for classic CJD, you would develop dementia, which is the early neurological sign. Then for variant CJD, there would be prominent psychiatric behavioral symptoms, painful dysesthesias, and delayed neurological signs. Now, treatment of prion diseases class remains supportive. No specific therapy has been shown to stop the progression of the disease. Both disorders are invariably fatal brain disease with unusually long incubation period, measured in years, and are caused by an unconventional transmissible agent. Now let's go to the third one, yung Kuro nyo class. Now, Kuro occurred in the eastern highlands of New Guinea and was spread by customs surrounding ritual cannibalism of dead relatives. So, yung Kuro nyo class, what happens here is that they would cannibalize. They would cannibalize infected dead relatives. Yung mga natives kasi ng Papua New Guinea class, one practice that they would do was that they would eat the brain of their dead relatives. Now, as you know, yung prions nyo, they tend to infect the nerves and the brain. So once they eat the infected brain, they would acquire this kuro. Now, the practice has already stopped. Pinagbabawal na yan class sa Papua New Guinea. But there are still some cases class that kuro would still occur. May mga tribes pa rin doon that they still practice cannibalism in a very discreet manner. Now, the term kuro class refers to body tremors, which are a characteristic feature of the disease. So kapag nagkakuro ka, ang main symptom is tremors, body tremors. Symptoms would progress from unsteady gait and tremors to loss of muscle coordination, severe ataxia, and death over the course of 3 months to 2 years. Then we have your scrapie class. Now, scrapie is also called your rida or your tremblado moton, is a fatal neurodegenerative disease of sheep and goats. Scrapie has a long incubation type, typically about 18 months and 5 years following transmission. The first sign to arise are usually behavioral changes such as general apprehensiveness and nervousness. As the disease progresses, the animal loses weight and weakens. It would develop head and neck tremors, loses muscular coordination, and begins to rub or scrape its body against object, wearing its fleece or hair, hence the name scrapie class. So kapag nagka-scrapie yung isang animal, this is an animal prion disease. If the animal has scrapie, the first thing you would notice class is that it would lose weight. After that, it would develop tremors in the head and neck, followed by loss of muscular coordination. And after losing muscular coordination class, the hallmark symptom, kaya siya tinawag na scrapie, is because it would start to rub or scrape its body against object until the hair or yung covering fur ng animal is removed. The disease inevitably causes death within 1 to 6 months. No treatment or palliative measures are known. Then we have the most known prion disease class, yung bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Now, bovine spongiform encephalopathy is also known as your mad cow disease. Di ba pag sinabi mo yung term na bovine would refer to cows. Now, this is a progressive neurological disorder of cattle that would result from infection by an unusually by your prion. Now, BSE possibly originated as a result of feeding cattle meat and bone meal that would contain BSE infected products from those with BSE or scrapie infected sheep products. So, ang cause class, kaya na-develop yung bovine spongiform encephalopathy is that the cattle would eat meat and bones from infected sheeps. Now, if a cow is infected, it has trouble walking and getting up. It may also act very nervous or violent, which is why BSE is often called the mad cow disease. Now, ang mad cow disease nyo class is known to spread among humans. Now, when a person would eat contaminated food, especially if yung tao mahilig kumain ng utak ng cattle, utak ng baka or uh, what they call this, yung utak ng baka, in some case kasi sinisip-sip yan glass. Hindi siya parang marrow. But there are some parts of the country that would eat the brain of the cattle. Now, after a person would ingest the infected meat, prions would spread to the brain of the individual, the body's lymph nodes, and immune system, where they tend to remain dormant. Now, the disease would attack the nervous system. Outer layer of the brain would develop tiny holes looking spongy. Then the host would go under seizure and death may occur. So that's how you would acquire mad cow disease class. So humans would acquire this by ingesting infected cow or cattle meat. Then we have the last one, yung chronic wasting disease. So this is a scrapie-like disease, designated chronic wasting disease. Usually affects mule deer and elk in the United States and Canada. It is laterally transmitted with high efficiency, but there is no evidence that it has been transmitted to humans. Infectivity has been detected in feces of deer before they become ill, and the agent is retained in the soil where it can then be ingested by other deers and elks. So that ends your lesson 7, your prions. Here are the references. Thank you.